I want a reminiscence to you, dear fellows, about the dear old days of the fraternity 66 years ago. In 1888, when Theron H. Rice, Howard Bell Arbuckle, and myself corresponded as to do something to help revive the fraternity and save it from death. And then that gathering, which is incorrectly called, I think, in the records, our convention, it was merely a conference at Hampton Sydney College in December 1889, when a plan was put into effect that I had written out to have the power taken from Alpha Chapter, which previously was a supreme governing body in the whole fraternity. It issued the charters, it collected what dues were, and it administered all of the work of the fraternity. At this Hampton Sydney College conference, we adopted the Supreme Council, which is now in existence in the governing body of the fraternity. At that time, there were only three in it: a Council of Princeps, Secretary and Treasurer, and Vice Council of Princeps, as I remember. I only remember those two offices. Theron H. Rice was elected the Council of Princeps, and I was elected Secretary and Treasurer. I have no recollection of giving any attention to the duties of the Secretary, but tens of thousands of Pis all over the country can testify that I have always been very active in the duties of the Treasurer in trying to collect dues. In fact, my nickname for quite a while was Please Remit. And then when I got a new typewriter with a red ribbon to emphasize the Please Remit, the boys called me Mr. Red Ribbon Smythe. Well, when I took over the work, Theron Rice was not able to give me any assistance because of the fact that he was a noted writer, professor in a theological seminary, and pastor of a church. But he did help me greatly with the sweetest kind of letters of encouragement and praise when he thought I deserved it. Howard Bell Arbuckle was likewise very much occupied, and as I remember went abroad to finish a course in chemistry. And that is the reason that Dr. Hart, in his wonderful history of the fraternity, says, for many years Smythe stood alone in the work for the fraternity. Later on, Dr. Arbuckle, Howard Arbuckle, came in actively to work and was a great help to me in the management and work of the fraternity. Though, of course, I had to do all the clerical work of the office in the correspondence and in the collection of dues. Well, you know, at that time in 1889, there were only two chapters, Theta and Iota, and they were trembling like the sword of Damocles, their life hung by a thread, because they could not compete with the other chapters, since they had no fraternity behind them. Alpha Chapter had gone out, and they sent me their books. They kept their minutes, the ritual, and their constitution in an old book that had belonged previously to some very old society in the University of Virginia. In the back of it were the names of the members of that old society. I thought that was names of alumnus of Alpha Chapter. So I proceeded at once to write to them each one of them, and say, you owe $3 under the Constitution for yearly dues, please remit. None of them paid any attention to it, except one old crusty gentleman. He wrote me very indignantly that he wanted me to know that he was a Southern gentleman of the highest reputation and honor, and he did not owe anybody anything. And furthermore, he never had heard of my Bandole fraternity, and if I ever wrote him again, he would have his lawyer sue me for defamation of character. You know, in those days, back there 65 years ago, we had no money. And when chapters were organized, or rather established, the oath was sent for the signature of the man who represented the group. He signed it, and then he took another man in to help initiate the group. So when Walter Adger Smythe was approached to form a chapter of the fraternity at the Citadel, South Carolina Military Academy, he said he would not do anything until he talked with Bob Smythe. We were devoted friends. Well, we thought it would be a good idea, so Walter signed the pledge, and they sent him the initiation ceremony, and then he took me in just by signing the pledge. I was in the fraternity for 43 years before I was initiated, and when I went west on a trip with that splendid man, Everett Fenton, we were to install the chapter at Oregon. When I got there, the 5 boys who were initiated under the plan we then adopted as officers of the chapter wanted to initiate, well, returned to initiate the others, and they begged me to be their initiate. So the youngest chapter of the fraternity initiated one of the oldest members, and they seemed to get a great kick out of it. My chapter, Lambda, had a very short life because the anti-fraternity laws, which were enacted by the states and by the United States government against fraternities in military colleges. But during its short life, the meetings were held in my bedroom in my father's old home at 14 Legree Street. So many of the members have asked me, with such a short chapter experience, how did I develop such an intense love for the fraternity? My answer is that in 1890, I had a desperate attack of typhus fever, from which at one time I was pronounced dead by my doctors, and through the mercy of God I recovered. And I made up my mind that to show my gratitude to the Lord Almighty, that I would try to do something in my life that would help young men in their lives to live a better life and a more enjoyable life. And the fraternity offered this opportunity. And that is the reason why I took it up. And then, another reason, I had the pleasure of knowing personally Frederick Southgate Taylor, who originated the idea of the fraternity, Dr. Julian E. Wood, Taswell, and one other. I have William Alexander most delightfully, and I think I imbibed from them their love of the fraternity, for they were devoted to it.